Yeah, I think people don't realize that people in our position get put in weird situations because if you interview one side, then people feel like you're choosing sides by not interviewing the other side. And if you interview both sides, then you're instigating.
That's right.
Right? So you ultimately, you can't win and you have to make these decisions as they're happening. I remember me and you kind of had the falling out over the No Plug interview because I interviewed No Plug and he talked about the shooting of Bankroll Fresh. And I remember you felt some type of way about it. You and I stopped talking for a while. Years later, the footage came out that he was actually returning fire and he acted in self-defense. And me and you once again had a conversation about that. But this happened all the time because I didn't want to interview, Bankroll Fresh's people because I felt like the situation was starting to get so bad over this that if I interviewed them, that would continue to escalate things and so forth. So sometimes I just have to take a step back and say, okay, I'm just going to interview this particular side. And if the other people could, the other side could go and do their own interviews. But, I interviewed Soulja Boy. He talked about the home invasion shooting. Then I interviewed the guy who got shot. And Soulja Boy's still mad at me to this day.
Mm-hmm.
To this day.
You know what else I never did? And people don't ever pay this any attention. Tax was never on Breakfast Club during this time. You know what I'm saying? Like Tax was never on Breakfast Club during this time. Like the responsible thing to do, or what you're supposed to do when you're a journalist is what you just said, right? If you're gonna interview one side, you gotta have a conversation with the other side. That never happened. Like there was never any conversation, from Taxstone in regards to, the things that Troy would say.
So yeah, because Tax is being smart and not speaking about the situation. I mean, I would never ever ask him about that situation. All the time we've hung out, I'm like, I remember when it happened, I called him, I said, "Are you good?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm good." That's it. That was the end of all of our conversations from that point on because I did not want to potentially, you don't know who's, phones are being tapped, who's wearing wires these days. You know what I'm saying? Like when you look at that whole situation, Casanova called up his man and said something about the shooting and his man's phone was being tapped.
That's right.
And that became part of the case.
That's right.
Who would have known? Who would have known? I don't think Casanova was doing anything malicious, but who would have known? So
Man, Vlad, we are not in the street. We just have, careers that have us talking to people who are way closer to that lifestyle than we are. When I'm building with somebody, I'm building them strictly from a talent perspective. You know what I mean? When I used to see Tax on Twitter, Tax was funny, he was smart, and he used to make me laugh. And at the time when I was doing Uncommon Sense, what I always wanted to see was who from social media I can take from social media and put them on television. Like that was the whole thing behind Uncommon Sense, like my talk show that I had on MTV too. Let me see if I can take some of these black Twitter personalities and put them on camera. Yo, we auditioned literally like 50, 60 of your favorite black Twitter personalities back in like 2013, 2014. And I promise you out of those 50 or 60 people, 2 of them might have had what it takes. I'm not even joking. Like I'm talking about like literally 2 of them were able to sit in front of a camera and express those thoughts and express those same opinions. Taxstone was one of those people. So when I invited Taxstone to come on Brilliant Idiots podcast, that was the first time that he had been in front of a microphone that I know of. And people loved that episode. They loved that episode so much that it was like, yo, maybe you should start your own podcast. At the time, Loudspeaker Network, which those still my peoples. I'm still affiliated with them. Salute to Chris Monroe and Combat Jack, God bless the dead. Like, yo, y'all need to connect with this brother, get him a podcast. And it wasn't just me. It was my man Kid Fury. Kid Fury was co-signing for Taxstone too. And, he ended up launching the Tax Season podcast and it took off, So clearly we were all right engaging him as a talent. And then I was using him on my talk show, Uncommon Sense. He would be on there every week. I had him in the Savage section at first, where I had him in his own section, but then I took him and he just started using him on the panel. Other shows that I would executive produce, like the top 10 hottest MCs, I would have him, as one of the round table talking heads for that show. So he was just somebody whose talent, I respected and still respect. I think, if Taxstone is still out here, everything looks totally different in this podcast, audio landscape. But once again, that's why the whole situation is so tragic, because number one, you had a life loss. You know, God bless the brother Banger. And then you had two people who are extremely talented. Y'all, you can say what you want about Troy Ave. Troy Ave made good music. You know what I'm saying? And we don't know what the last 6 years of his career looks like if that situation doesn't happen, you know, in Irving Plaza. So, you know, it just feels like so much was lost because of that situation, man.